Have you ever thought about how your name is kind of a timestamp for the year you were born? Well, today we're going to dive into the story of America, but through a really unique lens, the names we give our kids. We're looking at 145 years of data to see how the trends have changed, so let's get into it.
So, what can a name really tell us? Well, a lot more than you'd think. Names aren't just labels we wear. They're more like tiny cultural time capsules. They hold clues about our values, our heroes, and just our shifting ideas about who we are as people. And the best part is we can actually see this story unfold, all thanks to this incredible set of data from the Social Security Administration. We're talking about a record of baby names in the US that goes all the way back to 1880. It's a direct window into the trends that have shaped every generation since.
Okay, so our story starts in a time that was all about tradition, a time when the world of names was, well, incredibly stable. Let's call it the era of classics.
For more than 50 years, picking a baby name wasn't that complicated. If you were born back then, chances are your name was one of just a handful of classic choices that had been popular for, well, decades, maybe even centuries.
What's just amazing about this period is the sheer staying power of these names. Names like John, James, and especially Mary weren't just popular, they were practically institutions. They got to the top of the charts and just stayed there for decades.
And this timeline just drives that point home. For girls, Mary was the #1 name for nearly half a century. Can you imagine? For boys, you see a little bit of shuffling with Robert and James, and then Michael starts to climb after World War II. But the overall style? Deeply traditional. It was an era built on consistency.
But then, after the post-war era, everything starts to change. We enter this period of super fast evolution, something we can call the Great Name Acceleration.
This quote just nails the shift perfectly. Naming suddenly became a form of expression. It started to follow trends, just like fashion or music. A name could be absolutely everywhere 1 minute, and then just as quickly start to feel a little dated.
Michael had been climbing for a while, but Jennifer was a total phenomenon. It just exploded in popularity, basically defining the 70s and 80s before it started its long, slow decline. This whole rise and fall pattern, that was a brand new thing in American names. You know, when you look at the data from this time, you see this really clear divide between boys' and girls' names. Boys' names still had some of that old stability, but girls' names became way more volatile, way more trend-driven. The fashion cycles were spinning faster, and parents were just getting way more experimental with what they named their daughters.
And this isn't just a hunch, it's right there in the hard data. When researchers went through all the Social Security records, they found this massive difference in the sheer number of unique names given to boys compared to girls.
And these numbers are pretty striking. Look at this. Over 67,000 unique female names were recorded, versus just under 41,000 for males. That's almost 65% more variety. It points to this clear cultural habit of being more traditional with boys' names and a lot more creative with girls' names.
Okay, so let's jump to the modern era, from the 2000s on up. This is where that trend turns into a full-blown explosion of variety.
See, today there's no single Mary or Jennifer that dominates everything. The top names, like Liam and Olivia, actually make up a much smaller slice of the pie. It's like the charts are fractured into thousands of popular names because parents are really looking for something that feels unique. A huge part of this modern trend is, of course, the rise of the unisex name. Names like River, Parker, or Taylor that were once pretty tied to one gender are now used for both boys and girls. And it really reflects a bigger cultural move towards individualism and thinking beyond those old traditional boundaries. And would you just look at the diversity of inspiration today? I mean, it's everywhere. We see names from nature, from pop culture, think Bridgerton or Disney movies, surnames being used as first names, and even these really charming nickname-style names making a huge comeback. The sources for names are pretty much limitless now.
So here are the top names right now. And while Olivia and Liam have actually been #1 for 6 years running, you can still see that the overall landscape is just so much more diverse. I mean, sure, a classic like James is still hanging out in the top 5 for boys, but you don't have to scroll far down the list to find names that would have been completely unheard of 50 years ago.
And that acceleration we talked about earlier? It's still going. A name like Alani had one of the biggest jumps for girls, while a name like Truce for boys leaped over 11,000 spots in a single year.
It just shows that new styles and sounds are constantly popping up and catching on with incredible speed.
So after going through all this data, what's the big picture here? What does this 145-year journey of names actually tell us about ourselves?
Well, it's about a lot more than just seeing which name is number one. It's really a reflection of some deep, fundamental changes in our society.
The whole story can really be boiled down to this one simple but really powerful evolution. We moved from a culture that prized consistency and fitting in to one that now really values individualism and standing out.
At the end of the day, the names we pick for our kids are like a mirror. They reflect a society that has shifted from honoring tradition and heritage above all else to celebrating personal identity, creativity, and, well, uniqueness.
So in the end, this huge collection of data is really a living history of America. It captures our changing tastes, the power of pop culture, and the identity of each new generation, all told one baby name at a time.